Manhattan Bank has been serving the Gallatin Valley since 1905. Started by local farmers in order to help grow the agriculture industry, Manhattan Bank has since grown into a full-service bank serving the entire valley. With branches in Manhattan, Churchill, Three Forks, and Bozeman, you're never far from your local bank.
As banks are consolidating and changing, Manhattan Bank sets themselves apart through consistency and a small-town banking feel. Come see why we have been in the Valley for well over 100 years. Stop by the new building in Bozeman, see Justin Skillman and Tyler Dosher for your business banking, and Brad Whitmer for your home loans. Go Cats.
Member FDIC.
Welcome, everybody, to the R&R Catcast, a fan-based podcast focusing on Montana State athletics. We're two dudes named Ryan from the state of Washington talking about our dear Montana State. We hope you enjoy. All right. Welcome back, Bobcat fans. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the R&R Catcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Foley. He's your bearded host, Ryan Thornburg. We are the Ryans of the R&R, the Montana State affiliate of the Big Sky Podcast Network, and we are proud to be sponsored by Manhattan Bank, taking care of all your banking needs in the Gallatin County. They have 4 locations: Bozeman, Churchill, Manhattan, and Three Forks. We're happy to have them on as our sponsor. But we're here tonight to talk about Danny Sprinkle moving on to Utah State and the void that is in our hearts. Thorny, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
You know, I'm doing okay. I'm bummed about Sprinkle. We'll get into that. And I had a very frustrating game of mousetrap with my family tonight. You wouldn't be surprised how sideways a game can go in a family, but it went real sideways, and it was pretty awful. So double negative to head into this podcast. But you know what? Talking about this will be therapeutic, and I'll feel better.
Well, I'm a math teacher, and double negatives mean positives in my world. But
yeah, not
man,
here.
I am on
they just
top
compound.
They just compound. Okay. You're adding, not multiplying, huh? Okay.
Yes.
I'm doing great, man. I had one of the best nights in like a couple months for me. Spokane Indians baseball started 2 nights ago, and we are season ticket holders, or mini season ticket holders, I should say. And we went to our first game tonight, and I didn't know how much I needed it to be back at the ballpark, the whole family there. Man, I just missed baseball so much, live baseball so much, and I just feel on top of the world right now.
Well, that's good. So let's bring you back down by talking about Danny Sprinkle.
Oh, man. Hey, all right. So, Thorny, I pulled this up right now, and I have it right here. Let's see. Where is it? Okay, stages of grief. Where are you? So, the stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. For Danny Sprinkle,
Well, I was never
leaving Montana
I was never in
State,
denial,
where
so I
are
must
you
have
at?
skipped. I must have skipped right past the denial because that one's pretty. It's not hard to believe at all. It happened. I'm still kind of salty about it. So that's where I am. Anger is a strong word, but I am salty, and I'm not salty at Sprinkle. I'm salty just about the situation Montana State finds itself in, and yeah, we'll get into exactly why more here. But yeah, I'm still kind of upset, I guess.
I'm on like the precipice of anger versus bargaining. I'm kind of at the mode now where I'm like, okay, well, he left. I was a little bit salty, like you said, a little bit angry there for a moment in life. But now I'm like, okay, kind of in that moment, like, well, he left. Now what do we get? But I'm still waiting to see what we lose. We've lost some things. I think some more is still to be lost. But what's coming our way? That's what I'm kind of wanting to know. So I'm like dipping my toe into that bargaining world right now.
Yeah, I thought writing an article for the first time we've ever done this on the podcast, part of the R&R. I wrote a little article putting my thoughts out. I wrote it before the announcement came because I kind of felt it was coming, and it was a quick way to get some words out, but I thought that would help me go through those stages of grief. It didn't really help me. But you can check that out, rrcatcast.com, up at the top, written content. I don't know how to find it. There's a really good advertisement for our website. I don't even know where to find it on our website. But there you go. Head over there. You'll find it.
Yeah, I thought you did a nice job on that article. That's something you had penned like a week before. Like you sent that to me on Monday, and Danny got hired on Friday. So you were preparing mentally for that for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that was also why I wrote it, to try and prepare myself for the inevitable. But again, didn't help that either. I was hoping so hard that he was going to stay.
I know. But, like I was going to say, I had a feeling watching the post-game presser after the Kansas State loss. I looked at him on the screen. I was like, that's the last time we're going to see Danny Sprinkle in the Bobcat uniform. I just knew it. There was something in my heart. I kind of just accepted it at that moment. And like the longer it played out, like that week, it was kind of like the Jeff Choate watch all over again. You're like, he's going, no. And then people are tracking flights. And you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then it was like, oh no, we heard maybe he's staying. But you know what, Thorny? Even if he did stay, what was he going to stay for? Another year at most? Because it was inevitable. And good for Sprinkle, because that's what we want. Ultimately, that's what we want. We want really good coaches at Montana State, winning conference championships, going to the big dance. We can't pay him enough right now. That's the reality. So ultimately, this is what we want.
Yes, and that's where I've landed. And if you think about it from that angle, if we have a coach get hired away to a bigger program every 4 to 5 years, that means they were winning their entire time at Montana State. This is kind of new territory for us, having coaches hired away for better jobs. We went a long time in football and a longer time in basketball, according to Coulter Nuanez, who his research, Mitt Romney? Mitt Romney. What? Who am I thinking of? Definitely not Mitt Romney. Oh my gosh. Whatever. The guy who got hired away from in the 20s after winning the national championship for the Bobcats went to BYU. So it's been like borderline 100 years. Football was like all the way back until like Sonny Holland or something. No, he might have even been fired. But now we've had 2 coaches in a row leave to take a different job somewhere else, a step up. Jeff Choate at football, and now Danny Sprinkle in basketball. So now we're dealing with these emotions of like having a really good thing kind of ripped away from us instead of having things crash into the ground. And it's like, okay, get someone else in here so we can build it back up. So it's a whole different feeling.
Yeah. Quite the difference. I mean, Danny Sprinkle, in essence, was almost like a prodigal son for Montana State. Once left, came back, took the basketball to heights unseen. It's kind of like rising Phoenix from the ashes, right? I mean, I'm using all this allegory right now, but he deserves it. He was the man. He brought a swagger to Montana State that you and I have never seen. And then when it was all done and said, you look back and you're like, man, we were a tough team. We were a competitive team. You wrote in your article, he was 31-7 in the last 2 years in conference. And one of the stats that came to mind in your article as well was his tournament record, 8-1. You texted me today about us losing pretty much almost every tournament game for like almost 20 some years. Can you recall those stats that you were texting me earlier?
Well, we won one in 99. That was really before I even started kind of following Bobcat athletics. That was probably when Sprinkle was still playing. That would have been Durham. The next one was Brad Hughes in 2008-2009 season. After going 6-10 in conference, somehow making all the way to the championship game and losing barely to Portland State. That was a crazy year. That was kind of a fluke run. Let's be honest. Montana State had no business going on that run to make it to the championship game. And then it wasn't again until 2018, Fish's final year with Tyler Hall's final game. We finally won one. The Big Sky all-time scoring leader one victory in the Big Sky tournament. And that's after they expanded it to basically include every single team. So you had plenty of chances and still couldn't even do it. And all of a sudden, Sprinkle comes in, loses in the championship game in 2019, and then runs the table the next 2 times.
Yeah.
Because COVID
And
got canceled.
that's
Who
so
knows
hard
what
to
would have
do.
happened in that one? It's super hard to do. So it's just
Yep.
sorry. There's a bit of a delay here recording. It's making it a little bit harder to talk than it normally is, but it's incredibly hard. And the fact that he won more games in one season than we had in the last 20 some odd years is an indictment on Montana State athletics more than it is kudos to Danny Sprinkle. It's a huge kudos to Danny Sprinkle, but the fact that we couldn't muster a combined 4 wins from 2000 all the way to 2018 is pretty sad.
Yeah, it really is. The only thing I would add to that is it's even more impressive, or shall I say shameful for Montana State in the essence that the way the Big Sky structures the Big Sky Conference basketball tournament, where the top teams don't get protected. So Montana State didn't have to wait for all the mess to figure itself out and towards the semifinals or the quarterfinals when they could be protected. They had to play right away. They might get a bye. The first 4 teams do get a bye, but
they do get one bye. Yes.
Yeah. But not
not a huge advantage.
Like the Mountain West Conference or the WCC, how those guys structure their tournament. Anyways, yes, Danny Sprinkle overcame that huge hump. And I remember when we won with Danny Sprinkle those first couple years in the tournament, just the relief, the weight of that monkey. You would always talk about, we're in the monkey tossing season. It was in football and then in basketball. And I didn't think about that this year. That was just in the past. And that was totally due to Danny Sprinkle and the culture he brought to Montana State.
100%. Yeah, that's definitely Danny Sprinkle gets 100% of the credit for the turnaround at Montana State for what he was able to do. And that's part of the reason it's just so frustrating to me is it, I can never remember his last name. Is it Mark Few at Gonzaga?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always want to say Pew with a P instead of an F. I don't know why it's in my head. But you're sitting there thinking can Montana State ever have a guy who's going to stick around for a long time and just this is where he likes to coach and that's just what he's going to do? And if anybody was going to be that guy, Danny Sprinkle was a native Montanan. He played high school ball in Montana. He played at Montana State. He was an all-time great player at Montana State. And then he coached at Montana State, and he was here for 4 years. He wasn't here long enough to see his freshman recruits graduate from Montana State. And there's no ill will against Danny Sprinkle. It's depressing to me that we can't even hold on to a coach. That's the perfect storm for a university. You have a local like that, an alumni. Those are the guys that you might have a chance to convince to stay longer than other coaches would because of the loyalty they have to the state and Montana State University. But in the end, it wasn't enough to keep them around. And that's why it's more painful to me just because than Jeff Choate maybe even was, because Choate was kind of an outsider and he did great and it was hard and all that stuff when he left. But I was hoping that maybe hope against hope that Sprinkle would stay here for 10, 15 years and build us into a true mid-major, because I don't think anybody else is going to stick around that long. But maybe you don't need someone to stick around like that.
$180,000, man. Not if they can make $900,000 in the jump up. Why, you can't blame the man. He went from $180,000 to $900,000 salary. Yeah. He should. You would say anybody get that. Go for that. I mean, there's no holding back when you can make that type of money. And then in the next 5 years, increase your salary $25,000 every single year. So you're bumping up over $1 million in the Mountain West. Good for you, Danny Sprinkle. You did what you should have done. We all applaud you on that. The indictment is Montana State's in a conference, the Big Sky Conference, that's holding them back. And if you're sitting there thinking right now, as a fan of Montana State, hey, let's stay in the Big Sky Conference. It's fun winning championships in football. You're missing the point because now you're losing coaches like Danny Sprinkle to the Mountain West because we can't pay them because we don't have TV deals. We don't have the money in the Big Sky Conference to retain these awesome coaches. It is time to move up Montana State.
Whoa, I didn't expect you to go off like that. That's a good point, and it's. But I've also thought about this on the other side too. Utah State has kind of proven to be a stepping stone themselves. And I put that in my article. They had, 3 head coaches in the last 8 years. All of them moved on and away. So there's always going to be a bigger fish. There's always going to be someone who can pay you more money. Like, no matter where you are. Okay, we move up to paying our coaches $800,000. Well, they're going to leave to go coach at Miami for $1.3 million.
Maybe.
It's
But
a continual
that's not the jump.
thing.
That's not the jump. You could still, if you have a good athletic director, you can. And right now, Montana State has a vision, right? Montana State's primed to go off. It is going off right now. If we can pay Montana, if we pay Danny Sprinkle $800,000 this next year, does he leave? Absolutely not. You sell him in the vision of 5 years. Hey, we're going Mountain West. We're in a conference that has 2 to 3 bid league for the NCAA tournament, and we can build this like you just said, a Gonzaga. That's a vision that could sell a coach. But man, when you're only making $180,000 as one of the faces of one of the largest institutions in Montana, there's something. I mean, that's just wrong, Thorny. That's just straight wrong.
I don't think it's wrong. I don't. It's frustrating. It is in line with the Big Sky Conference, if not the upper 30% in the Big Sky Conference. We're in line with our peers.
Fix it. It needs to change. That needs to get, at least, at minimum, our coaches should be paid $300K. You and I talked about that.
No, I agree with that. Like, there's no reason that you can't be 300 when everyone else is 180 or 220 or in that range. You should be the top of the Big Sky. Yeah, we're like not at the top. I think that would go to any California school because basically you have to pay twice as much in California to make it normal anywhere else. But Bozeman's not that far off of that kind of pricing issue. That's a whole different podcast conversation. But yeah, MSU does need to try and do better for their coaches, but $300,000, Sprinkle's still taking that job.
Yeah.
And let's be clear. I want to make this clear. I've read some people, read on Bobcat Nation, some people say like, oh, Utah State's not really that big of a jump or anything. Like, Utah State's a huge jump. It is a huge jump. It is a program that has better basketball tradition than Montana State. They have a way better home court environment. Like, I love Worthington Arena, but we get 5,000 fans a game in a good year. I mean, it's going to be packed down there in Logan. They've made way more NCAA appearances. They've won tournament games. Like, they are a legitimate mid-major perennial power.
Yeah.
Like, Montana State can only hope to be in that realm at some point. So it is a huge step up. And I say this as a huge fan of Montana State, but I see that on Bobcat Nation in particular. Sometimes people have blinders on about that's kind of a lateral move. Like, no, that's a huge move up. And again, kudos to Danny Sprinkle for doing it. He deserves it. I think he will also use Utah State in the same manner as a stepping stone to get to a bigger program, because ultimately I do think that is his goal. And I think Utah State is a great place to do that. Utah State fans are kind of having the same problem we're having. They can't hold on to their coaches, and they're getting kind of a little cranky about it too. But if you have coaches moving on and up, that means you're winning. So maybe you don't need a guy there for 20 years to build it up. You just have to consistently make great hires. It's harder. You can't whiff on a hire because that's going to set you back. That's the hard part.
Yeah, I think Utah State's going to have Danny Sprinkle for a couple of years. But like you said, I think he's going to move on. A couple of years back, Thorny, you and I were in Bozeman together, and we were at a function, And I do believe we were told by I think it was a basketball coach. We were talking with some of the coaches on the staff, and one of the guys looks at me and goes, Danny Sprinkle's going to be a huge coach, like an all-time coach in the United States in a big-time program within 10 years. And I was like, yeah, I could see that. And this is his.
Well, why not at Montana State?
Well, because we're not positioned right now for that. There is a scenario in my brain where Danny Sprinkle comes back to Montana State, but that's not now.
That's not ever at this point. He's like crossed that bridge now onto the next phase of college basketball. The Big Sky Conference is a bad basketball conference.
It's not as bad as you think it is.
Well, no, but you made a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned it. So many people focus on the football aspect when you're talking about moving up. Basketball would be such a drastic change if you're in a conference that has at-large bids to the big dance. That's never going to happen in the Big Sky Conference. Never. No one's ever going to get a bid to the March Madness. Are you kidding me?
Man, if we could even have 2 bids, that would be so refreshing. So refreshing.
Yeah, the WCC.
It's so hard to win. It's so hard to win the Big Sky Conference. Take a look at Eastern Washington losing. Like the Eastern Washington smoked everybody in the regular season, and all for naught. All for naught. That should not be all for naught. Like, you should be rewarded for all that hard work. And then to lose to Northern Arizona, a 9 seed, on some fluky game where you get ousted on a late second shot. That just seems like it'd be super frustrating for a Big Sky coach. A team to be in that position.
Well, it's hard to have any kind of success when it takes just one bad game to erase. You could go undefeated all the way up to your first round tournament game. You could have a win over a top 20 program. Let's say you beat, I don't know, Kansas on some crazy thing in the second game of the season. You're like 29-0 heading to that Big Sky Conference tournament, or I don't know how many games are in a college season. Whatever. You're undefeated. You lose that game, you're done.
Yeah, you lose to Northern Colorado.
You're not getting a bid.
Fluky shot. You're done. Exactly. This is so stupid. It's stupid that the Big Sky, being a one bid league, this is a referendum on how we set up the conference tournament. Like, this proves to me that we should protect our top teams. The Montana States, the Eastern Washingtons, the Weber States of the conference right now should not play prior to the quarterfinals or the semifinals.
No. But in doing research, when we did find out about how the WCC tournament was ran, there's only been a handful of times in the last 20 years that it wasn't like the 1 and 2 and 3 seeds playing in the tournament championship game anyway. So it's pretty rare. What Eastern Washington did was rare in a bad way. They lost in the first round as a top seed. That's pretty uncommon. Yeah, but I would love it if it was you're automatically in the semifinals as a 1 and 2 seed. That'd be great. You just got to win one game and you're in the championship game.
Do you hear Jalen Cohn's going to Cal?
Oh yeah, I did hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in the portal.
Well, there goes the little NAU run. It can happen so fast in college basketball now. You have a team that's promising. It used to be like, oh, you ended the season on a high note. Every guy's coming back next year. Next year's going to be good. But now it's just like crossing your fingers like, all right, well, who's gonna be around next year? It would be great if everyone came back. We would have something going. And you saw that some of the teams in the March Madness, the best teams, were still the teams that had like the seniors that had been there for at least a couple years, that were like still had tons of experience and had played together a little bit. But okay, so Danny Sprinkle's gone. We're sad. Good for Danny Sprinkle. I want to make that clear. I'm very happy for Danny Sprinkle, and I do not blame him 1 second for what he did, or for taking that job. But now the question remains: who's going with Danny Sprinkle?
Yeah.
What coaches are going with him, and what players are going with him? We were recording this on Thursday night, April 13th. By the time this releases, we'll probably know all the answers and we'll sound like idiots because it'll all be done. But rumors, Chris Haslam's going with him. Rumors, Andy Hill's going with him. I don't know if there's rumors necessarily, but I know Utah State fans really want Raekwon Battle to come with them. I don't think I've heard necessarily that that's going to happen, but I would not be surprised one bit if that did happen. I'm not sure anyone else would go with them player-wise. I know Utah State fans also want Great Osobor. I'm not entirely sure he is ready to make that jump yet, personally. But anyway, what are you thinking? What are you thinking Sprinkle might do? And if he does take anyone with him, does that change your opinion of him in any one direction if he takes like the entire staff and like 3 players with him?
Oh, no, I was totally expecting a couple bits of fallout, Haslam being one of them, unless he's hired as Montana State's head coach. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I was
he'd probably make more money as assistant coach, though.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Oh man, the irony of that. Okay. I think I heard today on Culture's show that Sprinkle has like $500,000 to spread amongst his assistants. And then here's this, like the basketball operations person, like the person who just like the lowest guy on the totem pole for being on the staff makes $150,000 at Utah State.
At Utah State?
Yeah, $150,000.
Is that included in the $500,000 pool?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you only got $350,000.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. I think that's separate from that. So, oh my gosh. Yeah. The riches of just being able to move up. All right. Anyways, in my mind, I've conceded Raekwon and Great. They're gone in my mind. If they're not, that's a bonus. But in the whole grief process that we started this podcast on, I've already like negotiated that in my brain.
You're gone all the way through to acceptance.
Yeah.
On Battle.
I'm pretty sure Raekwon's gone and Great's gone.
It would not surprise me, and that will drastically change Montana State next year in terms of the style of play. We're not going to be the favorites if all that happens. So there'll be a lot of changes, and I would not be surprised. The other guy that I kind of thought of in my head that might make the follow Sprinkle would be Patrick McMahon, who many in the program think is the next budding star, and he got hurt. I think he's got the body type and the skills and the offensive prowess that he could possibly follow Sprinkle there. We'd see on that one, but they could be up to 3 players, I think, and the entire staff basically, Andy Hill and Chris Haslam. So that would be a bigger bummer. And I've kind of like, okay, this is the bad news. Sprinkle's gone. So anything else after this, like the reshuffling, the restructuring, it's all kind of to be expected. It doesn't change my opinion of Sprinkle if he poaches players. I know some people on Bobcat Nation like, no, Danny would never do that. Like, Danny's job now is to win games at Utah State. He's going to do whatever he needs to do that.
Yeah.
That's why he's such a good coach. That's why he's...
Yeah. He needs to fill out a roster over there too. Yeah,
he does, because they got about 70% of their roster in the portal right now too. So Danny Sprinkle is working on recruiting Utah State players back to Utah State, and he's working on recruiting, I'm sure, a couple Montana State players to come with him, and then of course many other players in the portal, because that's what you do now. Portal management is the biggest part of being a head coach right now. It feels in college basketball.
Man, if any Utah State player or Utah State fans are listening to this podcast, you're getting such a good coach. Don't worry about it. He's gonna get some guys who might not be stars on the outside, but they're gonna buy into his system. And come tournament time, I think that's what Coach Sprinkle did the best, was prepare a team for the tournament. You are getting a great coach. Yeah, so don't worry about that. But let's focus on Montana State.
Yeah, one last thing is I did listen to his very first interview I think he did was with a radio station, and he mentioned it again in the press conference today or yesterday, whenever it was, the official announcement from Utah State, but that he wanted to be more of a 3-point heavy team when he was here at Montana State. Did you hear that?
I heard that.
And it was just like he had to adapt to the personnel that he had, because I know one of your biggest bones of contention was that you hated that kind of defensive grinded out style, and the fact that we would shoot 20% from deep. And
yeah,
I think it's confirmed now that that's not what Sprinkle wanted to do, but he just like, that was the personnel that I have. I got the two of the best big men in the Big Sky Conference. I'm going to have to win by feeding them the ball. And he did. And he took us to back-to-back tournament appearances. So I think if he gets more of his guys, if he gets more of the players he wants that can do more things, because in the Big Sky, like any lower level of any sport, you're going to get guys who are really good at one thing, maybe not as good at another thing. Or you're going to get a guy who is a really good basketball player, but he's 5'7", like Jalen Cone. Like, there's always going to be one key piece missing. But at Utah State, a place like that, you can get more of those guys that don't have those deficiencies. A guy who can play really good defense like Darius Brown, but who can also knock it down at like 36% clip or something. So he might be able to do a little bit more with a little bit better talent. And I'm not trying to knock Montana State. It's an understanding that Utah State typically is going to have better players than Montana State in any given year. It's just the reality.
Sprinkle's got a private jet now. He can go visit anywhere he wants at any moment.
They got private jets at Utah State?
Yeah, that's what Coulter Nuanez reported.
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's worlds apart, man. Worlds apart. Big Sky Conference basketball, and even a Mountain West team like Utah State, who's like, it look like they're kind of in the upper half of payment with Sprinkle. But they're not the highest. They're still like 5th or 6th.
Okay.
So even a team like that's middle of the road.
Buy or sell. Go back to December. Here's your thought process. Buy or sell. We play Utah State. Montana State wins.
Wait, what's the question?
Buy or sell. Montana State beats Utah State last year.
Oh, last year? Probably lose. So I'll sell it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
What was Utah State's record in the end?
I don't know, 26-7 or something. I mean, they were a 10 seed.
Were they? Okay, good for them.
Granted, Weber State beat Utah State last year in basketball. And we beat Weber State twice. So you never know. That's just one of those things, though. It's never in Bozeman. These games are never in Bozeman, though. So in my head, the game's in Logan, and we lose.
Home and home. Let's do it, Leon.
Home and home with Utah State.
Bring him back.
I mean, we got an in. We got a guy at Utah State now.
No excuses.
Probably no
Let's make
interest.
it happen.
Yeah, Sprinkle has no interest in taking his team to Bozeman. Guarantee that.
Bring him
It'd
back.
be hard on him
Let's
for many reasons. You can't lose that game. It'd be a black eye. I mean, that's just, Sprinkle's not going to take that chance.
All right.
Okay. All right. So the only names that I've heard so far for this coaching job is Chris Haslam, Dan Russell, who was brought over by Danny Sprinkle to Montana State, who then, before last year started, took a job at Weber State, which was a head scratcher to me at the time. I don't know if they had a falling out, or why would you go take like the exact same position at a different Big Sky school? Seemed a little odd to me. Ryan Looney, who's been the head coach at Idaho State since same time Sprinkle, I believe, because Ryan Looney's name was in the mix when Sprinkle was hired. And he has not done very well at Idaho State, but nobody ever does. And then a guy named Joe Krabenhoff. Krabenhoff. I have no idea how to say that name. Current assistant coach at Wisconsin. I think he was like an All-American or an All-Conference player for Wisconsin. He's a young guy. So those are the 4 names I've heard, and this is from the account Low Madness, Major Madness. He's got Major in his name, but his handle is Low. But That's the Twitter account that tweeted those out. And that's literally it. That is the only thing on Twitter, which I've been scouring for anything about the head coaching search at Montana State.
Don't know what to tell you, man. It's Montana State's a desirable place to be with low pay.
That was a question I had for you on the end of my document here. How attractive actually is the Montana State job?
It's a stepping stone right now. Danny Sprinkle positioned it to be a very attractive spot. But when it comes down to reality, do you want to grind your way through $180K to pay a lot of that to just renting or trying to buy a house in Bozeman? I'm not sure, man. Montana State needs to make that a little bit more attractive if we want to try to attract coaches who really want to stay in Bozeman. I mean, that's a kind of a take right there, but that's how I feel.
It is worth noting that there are plenty of incentives, and Sprinkle never made $180,000.
What do you think he was
when he made the tournament back-to-back time? He was closer to 280, 290 after incentives.
Okay, all right.
He added $100,000. I mean, you get like a $50,000 bonus just for doing the coaches show.
Yeah,
that one you can
Fair
suck,
enough.
and you're still getting the bonus on that. So it's a little deceptive. But then again, so is every other job, though. Like $900,000 at Utah State, that's before incentives. It's base. So you're comparing bases here. But I know Montana State had a good package for the incentives because that's what they could do. They had to work outside the constraints of the Board of Regents base salary. So you have to bundle in as many little things as you can. So it does add up. I mean, if you're winning like Sprinkle was, winning the tournament, having guys graduate, I mean, that gets you to like almost $100,000 more that you get.
See, you're telling me he's probably got like a free truck from Wrestler Motors, and he's got a golf membership at Cottonwood, and he has, whatever, all these things bundled in. I can believe that.
Probably.
I can believe that. Okay. Yeah.
He's probably got some,
I think,
like you said, there's some trucks. There's probably some fringe benefits in there that aren't even part of Montana State.
The frustrating thing is, Ryan, you're looking at Montana State. It has all the potential in the world. All the potential in the world. Like, you look at Spokane, Mark Few, you can make the argument Montana State could be that. They could be a legitimate mid-major. It just takes one person, and I think we have the president. We have Leon as a presence, as the athletic director. But money talks, man. I mean, it really does. But like, as fans, we want to believe. Man, in my heart, I'm like, man, just give us a coach and build this thing. And then take a sacrifice a little bit. Like, hey, you're not going to make as much money, but build your time, because you will recoup that in the long run. I think that's what you were thinking about, Thorny. Weren't you hoping that Sprinkle would take the pay cut to recoup that in the long run with like 20 years of service at Montana State, where he's making millions of dollars and going to many tournaments, and Montana State now becomes the darling of teams, one of the darlings of teams in America? Wasn't that what you were hoping for?
I mean, yeah, that's the fantasy, right? Like, you get the guy like Mark Few or even Stu Morrill at Utah State, who was there for 17 years, who went to several Sweet 16s or something like it. You just got a guy who's just going to stick it out, and he's there because of other reasons besides money or prestige or whatever. The prestige will come if you build it. Like, Gonzaga wasn't a power when Mark Few got there. He built that. And he's only making like $1.2 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not getting paid all that much. He could go coach anywhere else. I don't think anyone's trying to get him anymore because it's pretty clear he's not going anywhere. But like Coach K at Duke, he was there for like 40 years. I mean, Duke wasn't always Duke. Like, there's just examples of these things. They're rare, but I was hoping like a guy like Danny Sprinkle, who was the native son, the alumni, the all-time great player. Like, if it's not him, then it's not going to be anybody. And that's where I'm a little sad.
That's not an absolute I'm willing to digest right now. It could be somebody.
You're in the denial.
I'm just a realist, man. It's just changed. This altruism that you're talking about doesn't exist all that much anymore. Like if a guy is willing to like settle in Bozeman because they're like, man, I just kind of like the pace of Bozeman. I like the pace of Montana. I'm okay with making this much money because I'm living comfortably. I don't need to make generational money, which is not many people would say that. But that's few and far between. You know, the discrepancy between the pay is so big, and I think that's always going to drive the narrative between this conversation. And whether we want some dude to stick it out in Bozeman and just make a dynasty until we can pay them, I think, Ryan, it always comes back to that. It's never not going to come back to that.
You're right. You're right. We don't have all the huge donors or anything, too. There are some support things that Montana State doesn't have, even at this, blooming stage that we're in kind of right now.
Yeah.
Costello's doing a good job,
actually.
Reaching out and getting some of that stuff, but there's just not like this huge donor base that's paying hundreds of $1,000s every year or funding these big things. Like Montana State, it just isn't there. We don't have that huge, passionate donor base yet. Or it doesn't seem like we have the sugar daddy anyway. Not that you need that.
I can see that.
There's just, there's some other things that, Montana State still has a ways to go if we want to be like a true mid-major. Like we have the 6-man club, but, it's nothing compared to like the quarterback club in terms of like, people in it and money brought in. It's also hard to be a football school and a basketball school. It's hard.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. That's not something I've heard about, or like that's not a narrative that I'm seeing in the media right now. And it's true. It is really true. Montana State is really lucky to be so successful in both things at its current level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just thought about that. That's a pretty good point. They're not. It's more common than I think it used to be, but it's hard to be really good at both. It's really hard. And you just might have to live with being pretty good at basketball. I'm just hoping the next hire can keep it going a little bit, is really what it comes down to. Sprinkle's gone. He did a great job building it up. Who knows what's going to be left after the dust settles. But I have faith in Leon Costello and Waded Cruzado to make another good hire, because so far, at least when Leon Costello has been here, they've been all good hires. As far as I know, it's been Choate, Vegan, and Sprinkle, right?
I feel like we have a volleyball coach in there, maybe a track coach as well.
Oh yeah. I'm mostly talking like the 3 major sports, but yes, you're right. Yeah. There's been other hires, so he's hit home runs on that so far, as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see. I have faith, and let's keep it going. And good luck to the next guy that comes in, and go Bobcats, I guess, on that one.
Do you have any hopes? Are you like fingers crossed for anyone?
I've heard a few names whispered around. We do have a couple sources here and there, and we never talk about any of this on here. There's been a couple that have piqued my interest, but until I see anything more concrete, I'm not holding out for anything. It's like the football search. You got all excited for all these guys, and then they're at the top of the list, and then they end up doing nothing, or nothing ever pans out, and you hire the guy that nobody was expecting, like half the time. So I try not to get too high or low. Like it is, I'm a little, just for my own personal interest, like we've only had the 4 names out there. Like I can't feast on that. Give me something juicier. Give me some more names, just so I have something to get me through this. It's just painful sitting here with like no information from anywhere. It's like stone cold, tight-lipped coaching search, and it's killing me.
Thorny, you like I served it up for you. You didn't give me one name. You totally gave me the PC answer in like a minute of conversation. I'm rooting for Dan Russell. Go Dan Russell. I like that guy.
So if we're going off the list we've seen here, I was expecting Haslam and Russell to be on here, and I would be okay with either one of them. Yeah. I think Russell probably seems to me, and this is limited, more of a head coach material than Haslam, but that's just me, just my million mile away vantage point. Haslam would probably be bring the most stability, and I think Osibor would stay most likely if Haslam stays, just because he's the guy who brought him over here from all the way across the pond. But maybe not.
Yeah.
But I'm not happy with Ryan Looney. I would not prefer him, and Krabenhoft interests me. But I think Russell or Haslam would be, I think, perfectly acceptable hires.
Okay, there we go. We got some names from you.
There you go. I thought you were trying to like get some, like, what have you heard? They're throwing name like, well, we don't do that here, man. And you weren't trying to.
No,
so that's my bad.
No, I just wanted you to take a stand. All right, hey, do you want to talk women's basketball just for a brief moment?
We can mention a couple of the news items that have happened, I suppose.
It's weird right now. Let's just acknowledge it. It's just kind of weird reading about women's basketball. Something's stinking over there. Something's smelling. There's a smell in the air.
Yeah,
what's going on?
It does. So I texted a friend of mine after Darian White entered the transfer portal. So that's the first thing that happened. I believe that was the first one. Darian White puts her name in the transfer portal. I texted my friend like, is this the beginning of the end for Trisha Binford? And of course he said, no, that's crazy. That's way too early. But just something felt off to me on this season, the entire season. The Cats were up and down. You would think with the senior-led team with Darian White and Cola Badbear that it would have been more consistent and it wouldn't have ended in a first-round exit the way it did. It just didn't seem like the chemistry was there this year. And then, of course, White transfers out, and now Cola Badbear has transferred out, and Leah Beatty and Grace Beasley have all entered the portal.
Yeah.
Now, I was under the impression that White and Badbear were done anyway, or that White was going to entertain some professional options, and I thought Badbear was just done straight graduated. So in terms of like expecting them to come back, I really wasn't, but it's weird that they're transferring to another, or at least the intent to. Someone said sometimes these players just enter the portal to protect themselves as they graduate and have no intention of actually doing anything. So maybe that's the case here, but it's interesting. It seems like there might be some smoke. Might be some smoke coming out of the women's program.
Yeah. Like I said, something smells, and it's just weird. Like from afar, like as you put it, like a 30,000-foot view, it's just something off. And I would echo your thoughts on the season. It'd be interesting. I'm a casual observer on this. Not casual. I'm pretty in tune to it, but I hadn't seen this in a long time. Like everything we've gotten from the women's program is like steady leadership. Yeah, everything's good. Montana State's a rock. And now this just feels like, whoa. And it's not just like a little thing. It's like feels like a big avalanche of big time players moving away. And now we're like, what's going on? So I don't know where Montana State's women's Bobcats team is going right now, but it seems like there's a little bit of turmoil.
It does seem that way, but I also, if anybody has it rolling in this conference, it's Trisha Binford. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's planned for this, that she knows what she's doing, and will be fine next year. And I also believe Trisha Binford is allowed to have a rebuilding year, if that's what it comes down to. It's like she's allowed to have one mediocre year. We can't expect, everyone's going to have a down year here and there just due to graduation, unforeseen circumstances, missing on recruiting. And it happens. So, but we're not even we don't even know if we're there yet to have this conversation. It did seem a weird ending to the year, but I'm not too concerned yet because I still have a lot of faith in Trisha Binford, and I'll worry next year if things need to be worried about.
Good point, man. Let's wrap this show up. Any closing thoughts for you?
No. I'm just sad. Is that the next stage? I'm not angry anymore. Now I'm just sad. Talking through this didn't make me feel any better.
Wait a second. So sad's not in here, man. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression. So, okay. So
depression.
Did you skip bargaining? Going straight to depression?
What does that even mean? What does bargaining mean?
I don't know. Like you're trying to like, make a deal so it doesn't happen?
Yeah, are you like bargaining with yourself? Like what does bargaining mean in this context?
Well, if you're sad, then that means you're one more step close to acceptance.
Yeah, just like Montana State, I'm a stepping stone. I'm just stepping all over the place. Skipping right to the end.
I'm happy for Danny
Who needs
Sprinkle.
that bargaining face?
I'm sad for Montana State. It's a weird position we're in because I don't believe we will be in this position for a long time. If you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me talk about the possibility of Montana State moving to the next level. I'm all for it. I don't need to rehash that. But that's where we are right now. And this is our reality. Yep. And if we have any good coaches, this is what's going to happen. As you put it in your article, and I probably should quote you. You said your advice is this: enjoy the good times, be thankful for the time these coaches spend at our treasured university, and thank them when they move on, and get ready to do it all over again if it goes well. That is where we're at right now, and that's where we have to be. So that's our reality. I'm thankful for Coach Sprinkle, and Coach Vegan could be on that way. Coach Choate was, and this just is a picture of Montana State as a university right now. Since Waded Cruzado, Leon Costello have made their moves, this is what happens. And this is a good thing, but yet for us fans, as a fan-based podcast, this sucks. And just accept that role at this moment.
Yep. Ultimately is a good thing if coaches keep getting hired away. So I am thankful, and it's just kind of new territory. Is this Montana State now? Are we truly the stepping stone program? Because that would ultimately not a bad place to be. It's just a sad place to be sometimes. But maybe once it happens a couple more times, we'll kind of like get more, ready for these type of things. But right now, it's just heartbreak. But I'm also optimistic because I think that this can continue.
Yep.
All right. Well,
all right, buddy.
That was an episode. We just got right into it. We didn't talk about our golden coolies. We didn't do anything. We just went right into the therapy session. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us ramble on about Danny Sprinkle, the cost of living in Bozeman, Mountain West Conference, whatever else we talked about. Thanks again to Manhattan Bank for being our dank sponsor for the year. We appreciate that. You can always find us on rrcatcast.com, which will very occasionally have some written content. Very rarely, I would imagine. You can find us on Ko-fi if you want to support us. That's ko-fi.com/rrcatcast. It's a Patreon type subscription to help support the show. And Foley, let's get out of here, man. Go Cats.
Go Cats.
Go Cats.